here. Good morning. I'm myisha Hill. I am the curator of Heal Your Way Forward. I am a Black and Indigenous woman settled on Chumash land, and really grateful to be here. Today, we're going to talk about your why. Um, and I hope you can stay tuned for the whole live because I think this is a pretty powerful message. Because starting with our why is a radical act of love. So, just for the start of things, I want to say that I'm live currently. Hi, Marshall. Thank you for being here. I'm live on Substack in the Co-Conspirators Collective on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. So you'll see me look to the left, you'll see me look straight, you'll see me look to the right, you might see me look up, you might see my eyes closed. So just want to tune you into what's happening. Is just a live, again, to remind us to start with our why, which is that radical act of love. And I'm going to be connecting it to the book, Heal Your Way Forward. Thanks, Nick, for being here this morning. Because as you know, we have our campaign that we are actually going to be extending. We're going to move from 3K to 30 days to 60 days. And so we're going to extend that until the end of October to see how close to the goal we can get. And we are going to update our packaging. So it gives time for me to get some samples, get the right packaging, and really make sure that when you all open your boxes, those of you who are ordering for yourself or even for students, that they can open something up and it feels like a gift, right? Because I believe that the book, Heal Your Way Forward, is an absolute gift. And so I want to kind of ground us into this moment and just tell everyone that yesterday, I went live yesterday and I talked about setbacks and I shared my personal struggle of being in what feels like a setback season and understanding that setbacks are set up for comebacks and just sharing that my struggle to show up online is really visceral, because I have to lean into the discomfort of vulnerability because I might make it look easy, but it is not easy to show up online and say, hey, I'm struggling. Hey, I need help. Hey, I'm this. Hey, I'm that. It's not easy to show up and practice vulnerability. And I like to try to live my life in a way where I can model that practice. Um, because when I think about myself in my life, like softness, um, softness, emotions, and empathy is like the core of my being. It's not an act. And so when I feel something like sharing that my setback was being digitally erased and not feeling supported and just saying F it and kind of giving up on myself, like I hope that relates to people who are on the co-conspirators journey, which is the journey of, for all of us, right? Even across racial difference, it is the journey of listening and learning and failing and moving into spirits of shame and knowing that shame is the catalyst for healing and turning the light on the shame and seeing where are the lessons, because shame can take you in a dark spiral. And yesterday, I kind of shared some of my dark moments that I still struggle with, that I'm going to therapy to process today because um, for me, I can do parts work. Like I might ask Dr. Richard Schwartz to join me again live for a live processing session because I like to model for you what I talk about. Um, and even Dr. Tama. Um, but it's very important, I think, to practice what you preach because I think sometimes on social media, everybody just hears the goods on social media. Oh my gosh, look what I'm going through. Oh my gosh, look what I did. But no one talks about the struggle. And I have to say, like this last, about a year ago, I got really sick. I moved and I got really sick and it turned into long COVID and I couldn't do anything for 6 months. At the top of the year, if you look at my videos from like March, April, May, you see me in a bathrobe and a bonnet because that's all the energy I had, and I was still trying to show up. And so, if you want to know where this is coming from, how does my struggle in this day, in this current moment, relate to the struggles of liberation? Well, if you feel a sense of hopelessness right now because there's so much happening, you can't keep up, you're overwhelmed, you don't know where to go, you don't know what to do. If you're feeling that sense of hopelessness, I would want to say that more than likely, you can probably relate. And one of the things that got me moving this week was the quote by Bell Hooks, where I'll share it on the screen if you're on YouTube, Instagram, or Facebook. Let's see where it is, y'all. In the book Where We Stand, Class Matters, Bell Hooks says that hopelessness breeds inactivity. Hopelessness breeds inactivity. And I'm at a point of my journey as a teacher, I can't sit in my own hopelessness anymore. And so practicing vulnerability, modeling what vulnerability looks like is part of the journey. And so when I think of my why and how it's an act of love, when you open up Heal Your Way Forward, I want to share my screen for those of you who are, I keep a copy of my ebook here with me. Um, when you read my dedication of Heal Your Way Forward, when you open it up to that page, see where it is. It says right here, I dedicate this living work to myself as a radical act of self love. I have finally come home to myself. And to anyone whom I have caused harm while trying to find myself as a neurodivergent Black woman in an imperialist, capitalist, white supremacist, ableist world, and to all embody the practice of being whole and human. In the essence of Ubuntu, I am because you are. And so, good morning. Thank you for being with us on YouTube, Black Scuba Bear. And so, what is very important for me to remember is my why. You know, writing this book, Heal Your Way Forward, was the practice of self love. And it was a reminder that I can come home to myself, as Dr. Tama teaches us. Dr. Tama teaches us over and over again. Her podcast is Homecoming, and her book was Homecoming, and it was like the practice of coming home to yourself. It's very important that we learn on this journey that the art of self-love is the art of coming home to ourselves, even when we feel like we failed ourselves and we failed everyone around us. It's really, it's really hard to show up when it feels like you're against a wall, and it's hard to show up when it feels like, oh, it's all meaningless, it doesn't really matter. And when I started this years ago, and my mom was like, what are you doing? Another thing. And I was like, yes. And it was very important for me to remind myself and my mom to remind me that even if one person shows up, that's all that matters. Even if two people show up, that's all that matters. If you're here from the collective, I'm going live on YouTube. I'm live on Instagram. I'm live on all the channels. um, and so it's really important for myself because yesterday I shared my setback. My setback is a setup for a comeback, but my comeback has to be rooted in self-love. And Dr. Jennifer Milan talks a lot about being rooted. So I just want to say a lot of the things I talk about come from people I see as teachers in my life. And so I want to clarify that I didn't write Heal Your Way Forward to teach white people how to be good. Let's just say that real quick. I did not write Heal Your Way Forward to teach white folks to be good. I wrote it as an act of self-love for myself and our collective future. Because in that book, it was important for me to tell my lived experience around people in predominantly white institutions. It was important for me to share my story, not just give you a how-to guide of how to be a better white person, because all of us have a collective responsibility to leave the world better than we found it, not just tell other people what to do. And I never want to be in a position of power where it's just me telling you what to do and not me living a life of practice. And so this is my day 2 of my Heal Your Way Forward live stream series. And I want to talk about intention. Intention is very important because if I want to intend to support the collective, I have to intend to support myself and heal myself. Because before I can go outside of myself, I have to go inside. And that's why we have to go to our why, especially when it gets hard. And in the times we live in right now, we definitely have to return to the why. Why am I engaged? Why am I doing this? Who does this support? And why does this matter? The first person on your journey that you should be doing this for is yourself. But sometimes when we're not rooted and we get caught up in the multiple genocides and traumas and collective fear that's happening and the real visceral reactions to it, we move into a deep guilt. We burn out, we ghost, and then we start centering like the pain. And it's really interesting because my tea bag today says to relate to your greatness and not your weakness. And if I could revise this tea bag, because I think all the parts of where we see ourselves are important, I would say to this tea bag, relate to your greatness and relate to your weakness, because you need both. You need to not always see yourself as strong and courageous. Sometimes you have to see yourself as, take that little breath. Sometimes you have to see yourself as soft. And sometimes you have to see yourself as vulnerable, because in another chapter that I'll talk about in a couple days, Hilary Ford talks about vulnerability being the sweet spot. The more vulnerable I allow myself to become, the softer I allow myself to be. And it's when we don't practice vulnerability that we don't allow ourselves to even attempt to step into softness. And softness is something that Ebony Janice talks about often in her work. If you haven't read her book, All the Black Girls Are Activists, or followed her work around the Soft Girl Society, please do. Because Ebony Janice is someone for, you know, Black women specifically to tune into in their journey towards softness, especially in a world that demands that we be hardcore. Um, and so I just really am excited for the opportunity to just be a little bit more slower, a little bit more intentional, and a little bit more present to the conversation. So when I think about Heal Your Way Forward, it is a book that's rooted in healing and legacy. I talk a lot about, you know, being Black and neurodivergent. I talk a lot about um, being a mom. Um, I talk about my lived experience. You know, the introduction is help letting you get to know me, letting you get to know my family story a little bit, not all of it, because I think, you know, when you meet someone on the internet, you get one version, and I believe that we're multiple versions. I wanted to write something that when my kids got older, they could understand the last 5 years of our life. You know, when we go to that last chapter in the reparative future, they can understand that I understand their deepest sadness and grief of my lack of presence, because for most of their life I have been as present as possible, imperfectly present as possible, meaning like, you know, getting diagnoses and going to different therapies and doing family movie night and going on not trips, like local trips to the park, you know, because they were young, to the beaches, taking road trips locally, you know, jumping on BART, you know, trying to show them like, even if you don't have much, right, you can still have a good time. And I think 5 years, of which 4 out of the 5 years was me working every single day and just watching it tear my family apart. I was hoping that that last chapter would be the story that we live out and prepare for the next one. And I do have the next one in the queue. But I think we could also write our future, right? We can write our future forward as well, because Octavia Butler shows us in the parable of the sower what's possible. Octavia Butler showed us and left us a blueprint how we can write ourselves in the future. And I think that's my goal from this day forward, is to write myself forward. And as I study Afrofuturism and sci-fi and possibly moving into a new genre of writing, you know, I kind of see myself as a character in a sci-fi novel. I mean, we all should right now, because we're living in like a dystopian nightmare. And so, you know, that's part of Afrofuturism, is being rooted in legacy and seeing and dreaming something different. And so when you think about your why, you know, you might want to think about, is my work, is this journey for me rooted in future thinking, leaving the world better than I found it? Another reason what I love about the book is that it's looking at, you know, spiritual, emotional, and systemic work. It's more, I would say, looking at your role, like what you how to invest in yourself in the work, like versus hyperly focusing on the system. And I teach a workshop, and I teach the 4 eyes of oppression backwards. Um, and when I say backwards, like I don't focus on, I teach it where we go through like individual, interpersonal, institutional, and structural, but I actually cover the institutional and structural, because when you look at history And when you look at how we've been fighting a system, you see that fighting the system has not allowed us to show up for ourselves, our own humanity, and also how to have better relationships. And so, when I think about going into my third piece around Heal Your Way Forward, it's in order for us to co-create the future where we can all be seen in our whole humanity, we actually have to start with ourself, our interpersonal relationships. When we can work on ourselves, work on our relationships, then we can move into thinking about the system, because this system has been functioning the same way for a very long time. And for those who believe that we have to dismantle the system, yes, that is absolutely your belief. My belief is it's you, your relationships, and when we can do those two things, we can spend 60 years on ourselves, 60 years on healing our relationships, then we can go to that system because it's already have been collapsed and we'll have to have a new way. What's going to happen? My greatest fear is that we've spent so much time fighting a system that eventually what will happen is that when there is a new space, when there is a new way forward, because the system has collapsed, we won't know how to do anything but replace and duplicate the same thing. Because we are so busy trying to burn it all down and tear it all down. If we burn it all down and tear it all down, what happens to people with disabilities? What happens to people with state assistance? What happens to the most marginalized? No one ever has an answer. And so for me, dreaming a different dream, it means, yes, there is oppression at a systemic level. I don't have time to worry about the systemic level. And I had someone try to argue with me about it. And I'm like, if that's my belief, it's my belief. If you can't be in community with me because I don't want to go attack a system, okay, I have to grieve that relationship, but I have to go the way that works for my core and the center of my being. And if I have to be 100% agreeable with you, to be in alignment with you, to be seen as whole and human with you, then actually we're not friends. And if you can't just see a value misalignment as a value misalignment, but you see it as a judge of my character, I'm definitely not interested in being friends with you, because I don't do codependent friendships too well. And so when I think of like the co-creation, the future where we can all be human, it starts with the self, it starts with our relationships, and then we can think about a system. Because if we really want to go like real, like in our imagination, like there's a system and it's like a computer operating system, and we are just smaller subsets of that operating system. Like there is the system, and some of us are Windows, some of us are Microsoft, some of us are Unix, some of us we're just all subsets of the system. And it's funny is I don't know if I would consider myself I'm not a virus, but I'm definitely a binary code, because I really truly believe that when we focus on our individual self and our relationships, we can reach a collective goal. The reason why we can't get there yet is because we're stuck in codependent, rugged individualism. And for me, that is ruggedly individualism, pretending to be in relationships with people. But the reality is that you're using subtle forms of manipulation to get what you want out of other people to call it a healthy relationship. Because the other idea is, if we don't know what it means to be in relationship, because usually when you think of relationship, especially here in the West, it's rooted in a power dynamic where one person maintains all the power of the relationship and there's not space for the other. And our parents, if we keep it real, the first source of learning what it means to be in a relationship, some of us didn't have parents that had the capacity to show us what that meant. So we left our households thinking that we knew. And a lot of us have been in codependent friendships and relationships since childhood. A lot of us had to parent our parents. And so when you've had to parent your parents, you might unconsciously parent your partner. You might unconsciously parent your friends. So we have to start peeling out the layers of power dynamics and peeling back the layers of codependency within our relationships, so that we can see a new way forward, so that we can co-create the future that we all talk about that we want. And if we really want this future, we have to get to our why. Why do I want a co-creative future? Why do I want to be honored? Why do I want liberation? What does that mean? What does it mean to want liberation, right? Um, and so I have a kind of a soul work question for you all to kind of leave here with today is what part of your story is still waiting to be witnessed or honored? Because that's the part that might wants to and needs to show up in this moment. What part of your story needs to be honored? What part of your why have you not looked at lately? And how can you heal that forward? And I think for me, if I answer the question, I try to answer my questions out loud so that you all can see it in real time. Let me put that question on the screen so that you all can see it. It's going to scroll at the bottom. And it's this one just says, what part of your story is waiting to be honored? Uh, Oops, let me hide that one. What part of your story is waiting to be honored? What part of you needs to be seen and witnessed? And do you have capacity to witness that part of yourself, or do you need support in that witnessing? What part of your story needs to understand your why, right? Have you turned away from yourself? How do you return to yourself? And, for my friends in white bodies, I have a couple things I want to remind you of. If you're performing your activism, if that's what you're calling, or your liberation, it is also helping you to forget your why. And here's one way all of us would know that we're performing our activism is that we're on the internet calling out strangers. Yeah, I had to finally say it. You're on the internet going back and forth with somebody you don't know. I've taken multiple social media detoxes, and if you notice when we had check your privilege, people would like say things, and if you notice, I got curious, and then I disengaged. Get, so you're performing your activism when you are pointing out why people who don't believe what you believe are horrible people. I don't have time to worry about what MAGA is doing. MAGA is not my business. But making sure that a single mom who's disabled with two children, who potentially is living out of her vehicle, trying to help make sure she's housed and at least has what they need for supplies. My energy goes to collective care and repair. My energy doesn't go to MAGA. My energy doesn't go to, and then you're performing your activism. If you're watching this live or you're watching the replay, you're telling yourself, just based on what I just said, well, as a Black woman, you shouldn't be concerned with MAGA. That's not your job to tell me what my concern is. Do you see what I'm saying? The fact that there's always something that needs to be said to one up the belief of someone else. That's how you know you're performing your co-conspiratorship, allyship, or your liberation journey. And the more you perform your journey, the more you forget your why. I want to be very clear. I forgot my why, being sick for so long, having my account just whatever happened with it, whatever. We'll keep trying. It'll come back and it'll probably be called something different because you grow with every iteration of your journey, you grow. Love is what keeps this work sustainable. And James Baldwin said it best, love has never been a popular movement. Love has never been a popular movement. It requires commitment. And Sam Beard told us the other day that investing in yourself requires a long-term commitment while giving a one-time donation, showing up once, right, is a dopamine fix. And it's deeper than our dopamine fixes. And the last thing is that when we recommit to our work, even when we're in shame, even when we feel fragile. Yesterday, if you haven't watched yesterday's video, it's on YouTube. Go to YouTube, Heal Your Way Forward. If you recommit, even when it's hard, like that's the best thing that you can do on your journey. There's a chapter in Heal Your Way Forward that says, did you ghost? Good, recommit. If you're really, really wanting to engage and invest in yourself, recommit. Recommit to yourself. Like this work is really a commitment to yourself. So, what is your why? And is it rooted in love, liberation, or external validation? Here's another example. Let's say I'm on social media and someone who's MAGA or something says something to me and I bring it to your attention. I will always tell you, never defend anyone on my behalf. Why, myisha? Because we need to put that energy behind people who need care, not behind people who don't agree with us. myisha T. Hill says that for myisha T. Hill. Now, if another Black woman or person says, hey, this person did this, go get your white friends, you get to choose if you want to spend your energy on that. But I want you to ask yourself, am I defending this Black person because I need their validation? I need them to see me as an active participant on the liberation journey. Because 9 times out of 10, people aren't thinking about you the way you think they're thinking about you. I know I'm not. That's why when I get comments now and I see things where people don't agree with me, I block and delete the comment. I don't invite that energy in the spaces where I'm trying to create a space to dream, a space to love, and a space to begin again. So I want to thank you all for watching this live with me. I hope you take something away that inspires you on your journey. I do want to remind you that you can catch all the live replays on YouTube. You can subscribe to Substack as well. And I'm going to go through comments now and see if there's any comments, questions, or concerns before we continue forward. Thank you, Black Scuba Bear. You said that was then. Talking about the past, that was then. You're doing a great job as a parent. Keep up the good work. Nick says, I'm your favorite sci-fi author. Is that what you're saying, Nick? That's hilarious. That must be the sign. Love you too, Jess, Michelle. Thank you for being here. Nick also talks about mutual aid. I talked about the importance of my focus being mutual aid. Jess also says that I need to clarify my why and how I'm using my energy. And Jess, I want to invite you not to do that in isolation, but I want to invite you to take that to everyone else in the collective. Tell them to go to the YouTube account to watch today's video and really ask that question like, wow, don't do it in isolation, right? We're going to keep practicing collective community. Go take it to the group and then sit on it and then come back to the group and see what you came up with. I think now is the time to think about why than to fall into hopelessness, because right now it's easy to become hopelessness. I know I've been hopeless. And then I read that bell hook quote and I was like, okay, turn it around. Let's find some hope. Let's practice vulnerability. Let's be vulnerable. And let's figure out who we are. Like I'm literally in real time, in public, really reconfiguring myself. It's like my operating system was outdated. Remember I said we were computers? Like my operating system actually feels outdated. My brain like feels super outdated. Like it's just like, whoa, 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 whoa. It's like the old myisha, like that system needs an upgrade, and like the old version is fighting with the new version on the upgrade. And as we go into October 1st, as we go into fall, I'm like, you know what, let's integrate that so we can upgrade. So maybe another question is, how do I upgrade I know my why. Get to your why and then allow yourself to upgrade your why. Allow yourself to, maybe you got to be like me and you got to play Beyonce, Let Me Upgrade You. You need that, like, that song is for yourself. I don't know. Shout out to Beyonce. I know that some of you don't like her. That's your business and not mine, but I love her. Just like I love BTS, the South Korean K-pop group. So thank you all for tuning into this live. Thank you, Laura, for being here with me in the collective. Laura, going to end the live for now. You can watch the recording in Kajabi, and you can also watch the recording on YouTube. If you want to support the work of Heal Your Way Forward, you can become a subscriber to our Substack. Our collective membership is open. However, we are slowing that down because we got some tech upgrades to make. But you're always welcome to subscribe on Substack. Grab your copy of Heal Your Way Forward, the Co-Conspirators Guide to an Anti-Racist Future. And until I see you guys tomorrow morning, keep living into your work. Peace, blessings, and have a beautiful